Loss is a fundamental part of the human experience, and it is through the process of losing something or someone that one is often shaped in ways that are profoundly painful but deeply transformative. Loss, in many ways, is a test of one's character and resilience. When we lose, whether it is a loved one, a position, a dream, or an opportunity, the world seems to come crashing down. We feel abandoned, overwhelmed by the void left behind and caught in the weight of grief. For those chosen, this pain is not merely a momentary setback, but a continual presence that shapes the course of their lives. Yet, in the midst of this agony, there is something more profound at play. Loss brings clarity. It removes distractions and forces a person to focus on what truly matters. It strips away the superficialities of life and brings to the surface the deeper elements of one's soul that may have otherwise remained hidden. It is in these moments of loss that the true essence of the person is revealed. One does not know what they are capable of until they are confronted with the unbearable weight of absence. In these painful moments, one might be tempted to believe that the loss is punishment, that it is a sign of divine abandonment. However, for those chosen to endure, it is not so much a test of survival, but of transformation. Loss does not only signify the end of something, it signals the birth of something new. The person who has experienced loss is never the same as they were before. They carry with them a wisdom that only comes from having faced what they thought they could never survive. The old life fades away and a new, more refined life emerges, one that is often more attuned to the world around them and more compassionate toward the suffering of others. Loss also teaches one to let go of the false notion of control. In an ideal world, we would be able to hold on to the people, possessions, and positions that we cherish. But the reality of life is that loss is inevitable. It comes unexpectedly, without warning or invitation. And when it does come, we are forced to reckon with the fact that we are not in control of everything, that we are vulnerable. This vulnerability, though excruciating, is a critical part of the human condition. It is through this vulnerability that we are able to grow in ways we might never have imagined. The pain of loss teaches us to rely not on our own strength, but on something greater than ourselves. In the face of deep sorrow, we are invited to turn inward, to search for a source of strength and meaning that transcends our circumstances. The chosen are not spared from the pain of loss. In fact, they often experience it more acutely than others. But it is precisely this pain that allows them to grow in ways that others may not. Through loss, they are shaped and prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. Their hearts and minds open to deeper understandings of love, grace, and the fragile nature of life. While the world may seem to crumble in the wake of loss, it is in this very crumbling that something new is often built. A stronger, more resilient person, capable of facing whatever may come with greater wisdom and grace. In the midst of loss, one may feel as though they are being consumed by the darkness. Yet for those who are chosen, this darkness does not lead to destruction. Instead, it becomes a place where new growth is nurtured. The pain of loss is never without purpose, though it may be difficult to see in the moment. Over time, the individual begins to recognize that loss has not destroyed them, but rather has reshaped them into something more profound, more capable of enduring future trials with a steadiness that can only come from having faced the deepest of human sorrows. The experience of loss is a universal one, but it is also one that carries profound weight for those who are chosen to walk a particular path, one marked by suffering that leads to spiritual and emotional growth. Loss is not an abstract concept, but a deeply personal and lived reality that affects every aspect of our existence. It is not merely the absence of something or someone, but a transformational event that reconfigures our lives, changing the way we view ourselves, our relationships, and our place in the world. It is through loss that we often come to terms with the fragility of life, the inevitability of change, and the depth of our own vulnerability. At the heart of the pain of loss is the sense of helplessness that often accompanies it. The very nature of loss demands that we confront the limits of our control. This sense of helplessness can feel suffocating, leaving one to wonder why such painful experiences are allowed to happen. It is a feeling that forces the individual to confront the truth that they are not all-powerful, not omniscient, and certainly not immune to suffering. In the face of this, one may question whether there is any purpose in enduring such hardship. Yet there is a paradox at the heart of loss. While the pain it causes can feel unbearable, loss also carries with it the potential for deep transformation. The human spirit is not easily broken. It is through the cracks left by loss that something new can emerge. The individual who suffers loss is often reshaped by it in ways that they could never have anticipated. The person who loses a loved one, for example, may initially feel shattered by grief, yet over time they may discover new depths of strength, compassion, and resilience. The pain of loss, while overwhelming in its immediacy, becomes a forge in which the soul is purified, hardened, and prepared for what lies ahead. The wisdom gained through loss is a quiet kind of wisdom, one that cannot be easily articulated or grasped. It is a wisdom born from experience, from having lived through something so difficult that it changes the way you see the world. It is in these moments of loss that we are forced to look beyond ourselves, beyond our own desires and expectations, and reckon with the transient nature of all things. Through loss, we are reminded that we do not control the course of our lives, but that we must instead learn to trust in a greater plan, even when it seems incomprehensible. One of the most profound aspects of loss is that it makes us more attuned to the suffering of others. When we experience loss, we gain an intimate understanding of what it means to mourn, to ache, and to long for something that is no longer present. This shared human experience of loss becomes a point of connection with others, one that transcends individual suffering and invites us into a deeper relationship with the world around us. Those who have suffered loss often find themselves more empathetic, more compassionate, and more able to offer support and comfort to others who are in pain. In this way, loss can become a source of deep connection, a bond that unites people in their shared vulnerability. Moreover, loss also teaches us about the importance of letting go. We live in a world that often encourages us to hold on tightly to what we have, to grasp at success, wealth, relationships, and status as though they are permanent. But loss serves as a stark reminder that all things are temporary. The people we love, the things we treasure, and the moments we cherish can slip through our fingers. This realization can be unsettling, even frightening, yet it is also free. It frees us from the illusion of permanence and allows us to embrace life as it comes without the need to hold on to it tightly. In learning to let go, we also learn to live more fully in the present, to appreciate the fleeting beauty of life without becoming ensnared by our desire to control it. There is also the painful but necessary truth that loss often forces us to confront our own mortality. When we lose someone or something dear to us, we are reminded of the fragility of life itself. The person who has passed away, or the opportunity that has been lost, serves as a mirror, reflecting our own inevitable passage through time. This awareness of mortality can be deeply unsettling, and it often prompts us to examine the choices we make, the relationships we cultivate, and the legacy we hope to leave behind. For those who are chosen, the pain of loss becomes an invitation to reflect on the meaning of life and to pursue a life that is not defined by material success or fleeting pleasures, but by deeper, more enduring values. As painful as the experience of loss may be, it is also a reminder of the preciousness of life itself. It teaches us that life is fragile, that it can be taken away at any moment, and that we should not take it for granted. Loss encourages us to live more intentionally, to cherish the moments we have, and to seek out meaning and purpose in the midst of our struggles. It is through the pain of loss that we are invited to find a deeper sense of peace and understanding, even in the face of grief. In this way, loss becomes not just a source of sorrow, but also a source of spiritual awakening, of personal growth, and of profound connection to the world and to the divine. The pain of loss is not only a personal experience, but one that shapes our very understanding of the world. It challenges the assumptions we have about the permanence of life and forces us to confront the truth that nothing in this world can be held onto forever. This is one of the most difficult aspects of loss. It reminds us of our powerlessness in the face of time and change. No matter how hard we try to cling to what we hold dear, the reality remains that everything is subject to the inevitable forces of nature, life, and death. This truth is a humbling one, and it forces us to reckon with the limitations of our own existence. Yet, while this realization may seem crushing, it also invites us to see the world in a new light, The chosen are not given the luxury of denial. They are required in a sense to face the true nature of their existence, and through that, they are invited into a deeper and more profound understanding of life. The pain of loss becomes a vehicle for spiritual awakening. It strips away the illusions of control and permanence that often cloud our vision, leaving us with a more direct experience of the world. In this way, loss is not just a source of suffering, it is a profound teacher showing us the fragility of life, the fleeting nature of time, and the deep beauty that can be found in impermanence. The chosen, having encountered loss, often come to understand that it is through these experiences that their character is most profoundly shaped. Loss becomes a crucible, refining them in ways that nothing else can. The person who has lost deeply is different from the person they were before the loss. The pain does not simply fade with time, it lingers, and in its lingering it transforms. What was once a raw wound becomes a scar, but that scar holds a story. The individual is marked by their experience of loss, and in that mark they carry a new kind of wisdom. This wisdom is not the result of intellectual study or theoretical knowledge, but the result of having lived through something that altered the very fabric of their being. It is a wisdom that can only be gained through experience, and it carries with it a kind of depth that no superficial understanding can replicate. This transformation, however, is not immediate. In the early stages of loss, there is often a sense of disorientation. The individual may feel as though they are walking through life in a fog, unable to make sense of the world around them. The grief can be so overwhelming that it is difficult to focus on anything other than the pain itself. And in this transformation, they are better equipped to navigate the complexities of life, armed with a wisdom that can only come from having endured the deep pain of loss and emerge from it stronger, more compassionate, and more attuned to the fleeting beauty of the world around them. As the pain of loss continues to unfold, it deepens the understanding of what it means to live in a world where nothing is permanent. It shakes the foundation of everything we take for granted, challenging our assumptions about control and security. The chosen, though they may feel overwhelmed by the waves of grief and despair, often find that it is in this very upheaval that they are brought to the realization that life is not something that can be possessed or tightly held onto. It is an unfolding process, a journey that leads through moments of joy and sorrow, with each experience carving its mark upon the soul. For those who experience profound loss, there is a profound shift in perspective. Before the loss, many might have been driven by a sense of ambition or a desire to cling to external circumstances that seemed to promise happiness and fulfillment. People chase dreams, material success, or the perfect image of life, believing that these things will grant them the peace and joy they seek. But loss forces them to confront the reality that these things are fleeting, that even the things that seemed so solid and enduring can vanish in an instant. This realization, though painful, is a gift. It invites a reordering of priorities, a re-evaluation of what truly matters. It forces one to move away from the external markers of success and find meaning in deeper, more lasting qualities: connection, love, wisdom, and faith. Loss so brings with it the awareness that suffering is an inescapable part of the human condition. The chosen are not exempt from this truth. In fact, they are often the ones who are most keenly aware of it. The awareness of suffering doesn't simply change how one views personal pain, but it changes how one engages with the suffering of others. There is a deep solidarity that forms between those who have suffered loss and those who are still in the midst of it. This shared experience creates a bond, a shared language of grief that transcends individual pain. Those who have gone through loss become conduits of empathy and compassion. They do not offer empty words of comfort, they offer the gift of presence, understanding, and solidarity. They know the weight of sorrow, and so they can walk beside others who are carrying similar burdens. This is one of the redemptive aspects of loss. It becomes a way of uniting people in their shared humanity. The chosen who have experienced loss can never again look at others in the same way. They recognize that every person they meet has their own battles, their own struggles, their own losses. The act of simply being present for someone who is hurting becomes an act of deep compassion. It is not just a gesture of kindness, but a profound understanding that comes from having been in the trenches of sorrow. It is through the experience of loss that one becomes more attuned to the pain of the world and learns to offer not just words, but true comfort to those in need. Moreover, as the chosen move through their own grief, they come to understand that loss is not a static experience. It evolves. The intense pain that initially feels unbearable begins to soften over time, though it never fully disappears. But what replaces the raw agony is a deeper sense of acceptance, a kind of peace that can only come from having truly allowed oneself to grieve. As time passes, they begin to notice that they can carry the memory of what was lost without being completely consumed by it. The person they lost, the dream that was shattered, the opportunity that slipped away, all of these things remain as part of their story. The memory of these losses becomes integrated into who they are, not something that defines them, but something that shapes them in a quiet, profound way. This integration of loss does not mean that it stops hurting, nor does it mean that the pain Rather, it becomes a part of the fabric of their life, woven into the tapestry of who they have become. It is not a wound that needs to be healed, but a scar that tells a story of resilience, growth, and transformation. The pain of loss, though it may never be fully erased, becomes a part of the chosen's identity. It is not something they run from, but something they learn to carry with grace. This is the paradox of loss. It is both a burden and a blessing, something that strips away yet something that gives life deeper meaning. The pain of loss also teaches humility. It reveals the truth that we are all fragile, that no matter how strong we may feel or how secure we may think we are all susceptible to suffering. Loss exposes the limits of human strength and wisdom, forcing the individual to reckon with the reality that they do not possess control over everything in their lives. It teaches that, despite all our efforts to secure a safe and predictable future, we cannot protect ourselves from every heartbreak. But today, in this humbling of the self, there is an invitation to surrender, to release the false sense of control, and to lean into something greater, something beyond the individual ego. This surrender is not an act of weakness, but of strength. It is the strength to admit that we cannot control everything, and that, in the face of uncertainty, we must learn to trust. In the wake of loss, the individual is called to find a new way of moving forward, a way that is informed by the wisdom gained through grief. The chosen are not immune to the pain of loss, but through it, they are invited into a deeper experience of life. It is a journey of transformation, where the soul is tested, refined, and ultimately strengthened. Loss teaches us the importance of living with an open heart, recognizing the fleeting beauty of life and letting go of the need for certainty. The chosen, in embracing this pain, find themselves emerging as something new, not a person who has been broken, but a person who has been made whole in a different way. The scars of loss become a testament to the depth of their experience, and in that depth they find not only healing but also an enduring sense of peace. As the journey through loss continues, it becomes clear that the pain associated with it is not a singular event, but a process that stretches and reshapes the individual. In this process, the chosen are faced with a continual reckoning with the transient nature of everything they once held dear. Over time, they come to understand that their life is no longer governed by the illusions of permanence, but by an awareness that everything is fleeting, that the world they experience is, at its core, ephemeral. This realization could be devastating for many, but for those who are chosen, it is a kind of awakening. They begin to embrace a new form of living, one that is no longer tied to the permanence of people, possessions, or even moments, but instead rooted in the understanding that all things are, in their essence, impermanent. This awareness of impermanence, while initially a source of great sorrow, gradually becomes a catalyst for change. The individual who has faced loss learns over time to shift their focus away from what they can no longer hold on to and toward what remains. What remains in the aftermath of loss is often a clearer sense of what truly matters, the relationships that endure, the values that hold firm, and the quiet moments of grace that we so often take for granted. Loss teaches the chosen that the most meaningful aspects of life are often the simplest, and they come to realize that it is not the external circumstances or achievements that give life its meaning, but the depth of connection and the authenticity of experience. This understanding leads to a life that is lived more fully, more present in the moment, and more attuned to the quiet beauty that surrounds them. As the chosen continue to walk through the pain of loss, they also come to learn the art of acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation or a passive submission to suffering, but rather an active recognition of the reality they face. It is in accepting the full extent of the loss, embracing the pain, the grief, and the sorrow that they begin to find the space for healing. The chosen do not run from their feelings or deny their grief. They sit with it, allowing it to wash over them, trusting that in the fullness of this experience, something will emerge that is more resilient, more grounded, and more attuned to the reality of life. It is in the crucible of grief that they come to terms with their limitations and learn to surrender, not out of weakness, but out of strength, a strength that comes from acknowledging that they are not in control, and yet they still have the power to choose how they respond to the world around them. In this space of acceptance, the chosen also begin to develop a deeper relationship with time. Time, after all, is both the cause of loss and the means through which healing comes. The chosen learn that time is not their enemy, but their ally. It is through time that the raw edges of grief slowly soften. Time allows for perspective, for reflection, and for the gradual integration of loss into the story of their lives. The pain of loss does not disappear with time, but it changes shape. Over time, the sharpness of grief dulls, and what was once a wound becomes a scar, a mark that tells a story of endurance, of transformation, and of a journey walked with great courage. The relationship with time also teaches patience. The chosen come to understand that there is no quick fix for the pain of loss. Healing does not come in an instant. It is a slow and often unpredictable process. There are days when the pain seems as fresh as it was when the loss first occurred, and other days when it seems more manageable. The ups and downs of the grieving process teach the individual to be patient with themselves, to understand that healing is not linear. It requires gentleness, space, and a willingness to honor the pace of their emotional and spiritual journey. Patience becomes a vital tool for navigating loss. Patience with the self, patience with others, and patience with life itself. As time moves on, the chosen are also confronted with a new sense of purpose. They begin to see the loss not just as an event in their past, but as something that shapes their present and future. Loss, when embraced fully, becomes a powerful motivator, driving them to live more meaningfully. They no longer take life for granted. Every moment is infused with a new sense of value. They begin to ask themselves deeper questions. What is my purpose now? How can I live a life that is aligned with what truly matters? How can I contribute to the world in a way that honors the lessons learned from my suffering? The pain of loss, when integrated into their lives, becomes a source of wisdom, insight, and strength. It shapes their decisions, their relationships, and their sense of responsibility toward others and the world. They are no longer simply living for themselves, but for a greater purpose, one that is rooted in the lessons of loss and the hope for healing and restoration. In this new life, the chosen also find that the ability to love grows in ways they could not have imagined before their loss. The pain of losing someone or something dear makes the heart more expansive, more capable of love and compassion. The chosen, having known the depths of sorrow, are able to offer a love that is both tender and fierce. They understand the fragility of life, and so they pour their hearts into the relationships they still have, appreciating each connection as though it might be the last. They live with an intensity of love that is born not out of fear or desperation, but from a place of gratitude and awareness. They give freely of their hearts, knowing how precious and fleeting every moment of connection is. The transformation brought about by loss does not make the individual immune to future pain, but it does prepare them for it. The scars left by loss become a source of strength, a reminder of what has been overcome, and a guide for navigating future challenges. The chosen are no longer defined by their losses, but by their ability to endure, to grow, and to live with open hearts. They have learned that loss, while a painful part of the human experience, also holds the potential for deep growth, profound connection, and a life lived with greater authenticity and purpose. Ultimately, the pain of loss is a paradox. It is both destructive and creative, both sorrowful and redemptive. For those who are chosen, the journey through loss is one of profound transformation. They emerge from it not as people who have been broken, but as individuals who have been reshaped, refined, and renewed. The scars of loss are not marks of defeat, but emblems of resilience. They are the markers of a life fully lived, a life that has faced hardship and emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more deeply in tune with the fleeting beauty of existence. In the end, the pain of loss is not just something to be endured, but something that leads to a deeper, more meaningful way of being in the world.